thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. Humbled.
No, seriously, like I again, how we connected is just, this is for the listeners as well. So basically how we connected was, through, how did you even hear about it? Like what's the whole story behind that?
Well, I actually heard your podcast with the ultra running guys. I guess it was about 2 weeks ago now when I caught it. I don't know when you guys, recorded it, but I caught it about 2-3 weeks ago, something like that. And I was out riding my bike. That particular ride was, I don't know, it was a few hours long. And so I caught your podcast. And we've talked about it. It connected with me. I mean, your story, my story are very identical, very similar. And so after about a week or so, I actually reached out to Jeremy and Jeff over there with the ultra running guys. And I asked them, I said, hey, how's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah.
And then they kind of put us together, and we've been best friends ever since.
Yeah. No, it's funny how like that space, because I did pretty much the exact same thing with them. I was scrolling through podcasts, just listening, for my trail runs and whatnot, and then they pop up. I'm like, I'm going to reach out to them because there's like the Charlie Engle story.
Right. Yep.
That was like, oh my God, I related to that. So then they got me in touch with Charlie Engle. So he's actually coming to Australia in August. So he's running, I think 1,000 miles, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think it's 1,000 miles. It's from Broken Hill, which is 1,000 miles away, to pretty much just next door to mine. And he's doing it with Dean Karnazes.
Sure.
Yeah, so hopefully I can connect with him, and just
that's pretty cool. He's one of my favorites. He is actually Charlie's book, The Running Man.
Yeah,
was the first book I found when I started diving down this endurance rabbit hole that I've had. He was the first one. I read that book in 36 hours, I think. I mean, it wasn't long at all.
Oh, you just go boom, boom, because you're so enveloped in it. You're like, oh wow, and then next thing you know, you finish the book.
For sure.
So I think this is a good sort of transition point into, your story. Like you've connected to my story, you've connected to Charlie's story. So if you want to take it away, what is your story? Like from start to finish, let's just go for it, because I think there's a lot these guys, the listeners, can take away so much from your story. So much. I took away so much from your story, and our stories are pretty much very much similar.
Right.
So
yeah,
go take it away, go for it. I want to hear it.
Sure. All right, so where to start? I guess gosh, I don't even know where to start, to be honest with you. So growing up, I grew up here in Tucson, Arizona, which is where I'm at right now, my house. Grew up, I had 2 brothers and a sister. I am the second oldest. My older brother's just a few years, or a few months older than me. I mean, we're 15 months apart or something along those lines. And then we have my sister and brother who are younger. Good middle class American home. I mean, it was, I played baseball my whole life, and they had their own respective sports. And growing up, in high school up until really college, baseball was life. I mean, I lived it, eat it, breathed it. I mean, I was in my mind destined to be a Major League Baseball player at some point. I wasn't quite good enough to pull that off, but that's what I wanted to do. And I played at every waking moment. But to put some perspective on where my journey takes me and where my story goes, like when I was in high school, I would hang out with all the kids, and we would go to parties and things like that. But I would leave early. I'd tell them, hey, fellas, you have a good time. I'd head out at 11 or midnight, because I'd go out and work out on my own in the morning. I'd go batting practice or run or whatever I was going to do. And so that was my discipline back then. And I don't want to.
Bear with me. You're cutting out there. Oh, there we go. So sorry, go back. w- you did you have anything from your childhood or anything that sort of played into, like it seems to me that you from, very early on, you were very disciplined, and
Well,
oh
I mean, I had passions. I wouldn't say disciplined. I mean, I was, pretty normal teenager, but I think I was more passionate about where I wanted to go, whether it was, going to a 4-year school to play baseball, or I had grandiose ideas about, president of the United States.
mm,
I definitely had an idea that I wanted to be in a leadership role and
mm,
someone people looked up to, and had that carry myself in that sort of way. And I've always been able to relate to people, I think, anyway, at least I feel like I have. Um, so that, so I don't want to make it sound like discipline, like I have practiced every day, but I did organize workouts for the baseball team at 5 in the morning in high school in the off season.
see,
I
and
dragged
that's like
I dragged my team out.
that's what I mean. Like you've got some sort of leadership skill, or some sort of
Sure.
discipline in that area,
Sure.
which translates. Same as me. I've always had that people person skill,
Right.
able to talk to anybody, and then
Sure.
through the journey, you completely lose it. You just
Yep.
lose that person, and then
Yep.
coming out the other side, I can see how that that mindset has come, that's not discipline, but that sort of comes back with you wanting to start a
Sure.
group, and in your position, you've always it seems that you've always had that sort of um disciplined mindset, not disciplined, but what a regimented leader.
Sure.
You're a leader.
Yeah, there's been some leadership, stuff. I mean, I've been captain of, pretty much every team I've been on,
Yeah.
except maybe in college. But through high school, I mean, I was a captain as a sophomore on the varsity team and
Mhm.
things like that. So yeah, I think in that regard, at least in my little circle of influence, sure, probably a bit. At least for the small crew that followed around and I
Yeah.
hung out with. Probably to an extent, I guess. That probably is right.
Cool. And then so after all that, you realized, okay, I'm not gonna be gonna be an amazing baseball player. You're not
Sure.
gonna be the president. Where does that sort of ramp up into what happened?
Well, yeah, like I mentioned, I got to college, and I found actually what I was actually very good at and better than most people was I was a pretty damn good drinker.
Yeah.
College, and I was more naturally gifted, so to speak, than other people. And I always, I'm loud, I'm gregarious, I'm, some would say obnoxious, I'm sure, if you asked them.
Yeah.
So, when I was always, and I've heard you talk about it, that I was always that guy at the parties or at the bar where, it's I had to take it one step further.
Oh, yeah.
There's one story. This was after college. I was working in a restaurant. At this point, as a server, so I was young. I was probably, I don't know, 21, maybe exactly.
Yeah.
But we had um, gotten off. I was working a double as a server. So that's, for those that don't know, when you work a double, you get there in the morning, you open up the restaurant, you work lunch, you have a little break, and then you head back for the dinner shift. So they cut us early. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but we had a little bar that we all frequented, across the street. So we went over to grab some lunch, and I had a couple of beers and a couple more beers and a couple of shots. And pretty soon it was time for my shift at whatever time it was, 3 or 4. I wasn't gonna be able to go. Are you kidding? There's no way. Like I can't make it. So at that point, I was also one of the head trainers at the restaurant. So I started getting on the phone, and I found this poor kid. I talked him into, he had never worked. He had just come out of training. He had never worked a shift in his entire life. We had a pretty busy restaurant.
Oh man, I
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I talked him into working for me because I was his trainer. I'm like, and he goes, well, shouldn't we get covered by the manager? I said, oh, don't worry about the managers. I'll take care of that. So I didn't ever call the managers. I called the host and said, told them what was going on, and I was switching shifts. Now, what I didn't know, and for those people who used to work with me, the section I was in was called the dungeon. And so it was the furthest corner away from the kitchen, from anything. So it was the opposite end of the restaurant, and it had 2 8-top rounds tables. So there's 15 people, and then 2 4-tops. So there was 24 people in this section. And you definitely don't give that to 20-year-old kids who are the first day out of training. So yeah, I caught a talking to from my manager, who happened to know me growing up as a kid. He worked with my dad in the past. The next day when I showed up, and he politely told me that I was not allowed to do that again. And had I not known him, probably since I was a kid, I would have gotten in a lot more trouble. But so that's,
I get it.
So I spent the rest of the day at that same bar. I never left my bar stool for 12 hours. And so it was, I was able to talk, like you said, talk to anybody. I had 3 or 4 or 10, I don't even know, different groups of people that had come in and out of the restaurant that day. And I just stayed and hung out, and waited till my friends all got off shift at like midnight, and they came back to the bar after work, and they said, "Are you still here?"
But by that point, you're gone, and they've just come in. They say, "Oh, I get it. Makes me cringe."
I know. And you'd think that moment would have kind of, the light bulb would have been off. Like, maybe this isn't healthy, your relationship to booze and partying, but it didn't. Not for many, many years to come, and many, many more stories. But so anyhow, that was one of the stories. But I think looking back, alcohol is actually it's the defining moment where my competitive baseball career went out the window. And so it was my sophomore year in college. I went to a junior college here in Arizona, which is a 2-year school, and it was our last weekend game, or last regular season, I should say, game, and it was out of town, so we had like a 6-hour bus ride before the playoffs were starting. The postseason was starting. I had a huge Spanish final that day that I was going to take the following day in the testing center, because I wasn't going to be there. We were traveling, and I didn't study. We all got booze. It was our last game, so we sat in the back of the bus and boozed it up for the next 7 hours. So fast forward to the next day, I got to the testing center. I hadn't studied, so I made a little cheat sheet, and I got caught from the testing center. Of course, I'm sure I wasn't being slick about it. So they grabbed my stuff and they said, "We're going to give this to your professor. Go talk to her tomorrow." So I went into my professor, and thank goodness she liked me, because I had the same professor for 4 semesters, had A's in her class, had really succeeded in that Spanish class. And I mean, the look of disappointment on her face was pretty powerful. But she did me a favor and said, "All right, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to put cheating on your transcripts, but I am going to give you a D so that you don't get credit for this class. You're going to have to take it over. But you also won't be ineligible for the postseason." I said, "Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for doing me this favor. I really appreciate it." So I finished up at that school, and then the following semester I was going to my next school, and really I was slipping down that slope anyway at this point. But I said, no, I want to continue to play baseball. So I went to the school here, the University of Arizona, down the street from my house, that I'd grown up watching and wanted to play for this team. And so I was going to go as a walk-on. Now I knew the coaches, because again, this is my hometown. I knew the coaches. I knew some of the team, some of the players I'd grown up playing with. So I was just going to go and walk on. And so as I go to register for school, I get all my classes. The first or second day, I show up to the registrars, to get cleared to go try out for the team that following week. She said, "Oh, you can't try out. You're not eligible." I said, "I don't understand why I'm not eligible." She says, "You only have 47 credits or 46 credits coming in, and you're a junior in college." And so I was 2 credits short. You need 48, and I only had 46. And that D in Spanish, which I had an A in the class. So even if I had bombed that final, I would have passed. But because I got the D and that class didn't transfer over, I was no longer allowed to play or try out for that team anyway. And that was it. I basically hung up my spikes at that point.
It's funny how it all, at the time, it's only, the power of hindsight. You look back and you go, "Oh shit, imagine if I did that," and you go, and you at the time you don't realize that. You just go, whatever, keep going on.
I was 21, and I'm like, "Oh, there'll be other days, not a big deal. Maybe I'll try out in the spring," or the coach knows who I am, he'll come get me, he'll fix it, or something along those lines. Whatever was going through my mind, it sure as hell wasn't, look what I just did.
So
Started working at the restaurant, that one I was talking about earlier, and I was good at it. I'm a people person. I work hard. It's fast paced, and restaurants are fantastic, and they're a lot of fun. It's usually, typically speaking, young, extroverted. You always have cash on hand. I mean, it's a fun environment, and I got good at it, and I got promoted quickly to the point where I had my first managing job at 21 years old. And I got a front of the house managing job at a different restaurant. I actually got recruited to go work over here. At the time, that's where I met my first wife. Was at that restaurant. We were both kids, and she was pregnant, and we were getting married, and my life was starting there with. And so I went into restaurant management from there and started managing restaurants, which I did for the next 15 years, give or take, something along those lines. And it was a lot of fun. But I've heard you talk about it, but working in restaurants, I mean, it's that sort of lifestyle. I mean,
it's toxic. I was talking about this yesterday. The hospitality lifestyle, okay, some people can do it, some people can't do it. We're the people that just can't do it.
Right.
The hours they want you to work. So upper management. I was talking about this with my dad. They expect you to work overtime just because. And it's like, well, I can understand, a couple hours overtime, but when you're working, we're doing 38-hour weeks is an average week. So let's say 40. You end up doing a 70-hour week.
Sure.
And you're going, where does that let up? So I remember 2 weeks in a row, for me, I did a 60-hour week and a 70-hour week. And I wasn't home. I was coming home late, drunk, wake up at 10 or 11 o'clock, get ready. As soon as I woke up, oh shit, put my stuff on, go out the door, do it all again. And it was like, and no one thought that was wrong. Everyone thought that was a normal thing to do. And
it is normal in restaurants for sure. Yeah.
But it's like, that is going to eat away at someone over a period of time.
I did it for 15 years or so, and it was 70-hour weeks were relatively normal. I mean, I wouldn't say I worked 70-hour weeks every week, but it wasn't uncommon. My longest stretch or worst stretch, I wasn't a general manager at this point. I was a kitchen manager, but I did 212 hours in 2 weeks with one day. And finally, my GM, who I'm still good friends with, he saw me at a breaking point that at the end of that stretch said, you need to go home, get some rest, And so, because at that point, I was in tears in the walk-in because the freezer had just broke. And anyhow, I mean, I could talk restaurants, all day. I mean, that's, but I was good at it, it's fast-paced, it's hard work, you're on your feet, but it's people all day long.
That's it. It's that, I think, community, being around people that like you. What I'm starting to pick up here is that, stop me if I'm wrong, because this is, again, our story is very, 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 very similar.
They are.
I'm a people person. I get along with a lot of people. I'm funny, happy. I bring people up.
Sure.
But no one saw what or how much hurt was going on inside, because I was always people pleasing, always around good people. Being around people was my drug in a way.
Yeah.
But it was like smoke and mirrors. No one knew. You're at that bar for 12 hours. From an outside perspective, they go, oh, wow, like, oh, shit, Kelly's got a bit of a problem. But, with your friends, they go, oh, he's still there. He's having a good time. Join him. Like that. No one looks at that from an outside perspective, because they're your friend and they're nice, good people.
Right.
In or doing the same job as you. So there's not that third perspective to take to go, hey, you got to stop what you're doing. It's like,
for sure.
No one saw, because of that. I put myself in that position.
Well, and it's like you said, it's part of the culture with restaurants. It wasn't a problem because it wasn't a problem. We all did. We all would stay at the bar and if we closed, once I started running sports bars, it wasn't uncommon that we'd hang out there till 4 or 5 in the morning, go home, take a nap, and literally come back to work in the morning. There were times I would leave the restaurant to the morning drive talk show on the radio and come back to the restaurant during the same show. You go, you'd hear it when they get there and say, "Hey, good morning, traffic at 5 a.m. and whatever," and then come back, all right, wrapping up at 9 o'clock, and I'm headed back to the restaurant. That happens. And yeah, no one knew it was a problem, because I can't say that. People knew I had a problem, I think, anyway. No one said anything, but it didn't stand out.
It never does.
I was a needle in a stack of needles at that point, because there were the people that stood out were the mature ones that went home, and didn't go out partying with us. Those were the outsiders. So boy, we could probably swap restaurant stories for days. I got some funny ones, some funny ones. But so what that did was, at that point I was married at 22. Had our first kid at 22. Bought our first house at 22. Ended up having my daughter at 24, and that was my life. I worked restaurants while my wife at the time, she stayed home, and then eventually went back to school and got her all the way through her master's degree. She stayed home with the babies so that I could go to work and work my 60, 70, whatever it is, hours a week. And that's how we had it. And it worked. I missed a lot of stuff because of that. Birthdays and trips to the zoo and whatever. But so ironically, my drinking, which compared to normal, quote unquote, people, was not a normal relationship with alcohol, but it really didn't get bad until I tried to leave restaurants and work for myself. That's when and that was in 2000 and I'm going to say 10 or so. So that's when it really started to get bad, about 10 years into my marriage, 2011 ish. Because now I was just working for myself. There was no, I was in sales and I did insurance and I still saw people, but it wasn't like restaurants. Nobody knew me. I was going to and from appointments by myself in my car, so I could stop for booze at any time I wanted to. I'd go get those little shooters and keep those in the car, and that was what I did every day. And that's really when it started to get bad. That's when I think it crossed over from you drink too much to you have an actual problem, was in that 2 year stretch.
Was there a tipping point or a defining moment? Because through my story, there wasn't there was 5 defining moments that it took that many times to realize I've fucked up. That how do you word it? You've got to change. You've got to do something. So for you, was there you realized in that 2 years that one's not enough and two's too many. Where's that line? Where did you draw that line and go, okay, I have an issue, I have a problem, what am I going to do about it? Or was that just a gradual?
So there were lots of moments that should have been defining moments that weren't. I had multiple chances and opportunities and things that you should have thought, okay, well, now this is time to quit. There's been times when the kids saw me drunk or passed out or stumbling, or one of the ones that hurts really the worst now was when they were younger. I don't know how old they were, but they were young enough where I was reading bedtime stories and I couldn't I couldn't concentrate on the pages, and I just would tell them something like, we'll read tomorrow, Dad's tired, I just got home from work, or whatever it was. But I couldn't concentrate on the pages, and that one, even in the moment, that hurt, and I still didn't do anything about it. And I think somewhere, and you hear this phrase often, somewhere deep down I knew I had a problem. I wouldn't talk about it, because if I talked about it, that made it real. And then I would say, if I talked about it, I wouldn't be able to drink tomorrow. What are you kidding? There's no way I would address this.
Hit the nail on the head. Yes, that's exactly it. When you there's power in words. There's power
Mm-hmm.
in speaking that truth. Because if you
Sure.
keep it in here, no one knows about it. But
For sure.
it's that in especially in recovery, it's that
Mm-hmm.
you're always thinking about that drink. That
Right.
what you just said there. If you tell people, then you cannot have that drink tomorrow because you've got a problem now. So if I keep it
Right.
with me, it's okay. I can deal with it
Sure.
for the fuller time being, and I'll deal with
Right.
it as it gets worse. So I
Right.
get it. I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. I get it. Okay.
It was yeah, and there were multiple moments like that between, fights with my wife at the time. I mean countless, because she knew. I
Mhm.
mean, she saw me. I might have been able to hide it from most people, or at least, I don't know if hide it's the right word. I can keep it at bay. They didn't
Mhm.
know how bad it was. She knew flat out how bad it was.
Mhm.
So what ended up happening was, in 2015, I believe, my wife at that time, she'd had enough.
Mhm.
This was the final straw. That particular day, I actually wasn't drunk that day. I had drank, don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
I wasn't drunk. But I was lying about it, and I was hiding those little shooters anywhere I could hide them. I thought they were great hiding spots. Apparently, they weren't that clever. Um, and they found them, and the kids found them. My daughter did, and so, basically, it was the ultimatum. You're sober or we're done.
Mhm.
And so the very next day, semi reluctantly, I went willingly, but I was also doing it for the wrong reasons. I went to AA that day,
Mhm.
and it was November 1st of 2015. I went to AA that day, not for me. I went it so I didn't lose everything. So my world didn't come crumbling down.
Mhm.
Wife leaving, kids leaving, my house getting kicked out, so forth. But I went to AA, and I actually was sober for a year at that point.
Mm.
And it was a good year. And then, like most good, um, smart, intelligent alcoholics, I had a year under my belt and
Mm.
said, "Well, look at me, I'm cured.
Mhm. Oh,
I can,
mate, I
I'm
I
good."
I get it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it was. I actually don't remember the exact date. I can tell you where I was, but I don't remember the date. But it was a little over a year from having sobriety, and I went to meetings fairly regularly in the beginning, but I didn't like AA at that time too. I also wasn't willing to. I never used the word alcoholic. I would say I drank too much or alcohol
Mhm.
abuse. I would never say alcoholic, back then, and it's just I couldn't. That bruised my ego. I couldn't admit.
That's exactly it. That's
I couldn't
exactly it.
admit that. Yeah, you have a problem. No, I don't have a problem. I can keep this under control. I really can. So, yeah, a little over a year, I decided, you know what, we're going to give it a shot. And so I had a drink. Actually, I think I had two that day. And I was good.
That's exact and
Look at
it
me.
starts off, "Wow, like, I can have 2 now, like, look at me,
Yeah.
I'm all good, I'm cured,"
Right.
and then it gets
Yeah.
more and more.
Yeah. And then it was like 2 days later. And this is a common story. I've heard it from lots and lots of people now that I've been sober now for 3.5 years. Um, but it was, and I don't even think I drank the next day. I don't recall for sure, but the following day I know I did, because I went, well, look at that. You had three and did, or two, and you did just fine.
Mm.
We can have three.
Mhm.
And it just snowballed quickly to the
Mm.
point where after about, I'm going to say 2 months from that stretch, um, my marriage had dissolved, and I was leaving the house. And at that time, we were taking care of my grandmother. So my grandmother, my mom's mom. And so, she was actually staying with us. And so when I left, I had nowhere to go. And so grandma and I went back to her house,
Mm.
because she had broken her hip, um, and was living with us at that point, probably a year and a half to 2 years. And so we went back to grandma's house, just me and her. I was a server at that point. So remember, I had been a general manager now for 10 years, maybe 12. And now I was just serving tables. Ironically, at the same company I was originally.
Mm.
Um, and now I was back at grandma's house, because at that point, I didn't have any money saved up. I mean, me and my wife, we never had extra money. I mean, we never had, the kids never suffered. Didn't have food on the table, but, I always said we had to play utility roulette, where what do you want to pay this month? Well, what did we pay last month? We paid gas last month. All right, we're going to skip it. So that's kind of where we always were for the most part anyway. So I was, to put it plainly, had it not been for my grandmother in her house, I was homeless.
Yeah.
I had nowhere to go. I had a job, as a server, making probably, I bet you if I had saved everything, I was probably making $24,000 a year, maybe something along those lines. But I sure as shit didn't save everything. And so now I have, my marriage is gone. And now I'm a server with all this cash, and I'm not, at this point, I'm not doing well. And I ended up going down the wrong end of the bottle quickly, to the point where about 6 months after that, let me back up. I guess I should in that point. So during that time, after my wife and I had split, I actually now had met Jamie, who you got to meet earlier on screen. She waved at you at that point, and we really connected, after that. And so I actually, I had zero plans when my wife split of getting in any sort of relationship. I mean, there's no way. It's me and my booze and my bachelor lifestyle, and that's it. But thank God I met her, because at that point she had no idea about any of this history either. To her, I was still the charming, witty, kind of obnoxious, extrovert that has no problem talking to a stranger in the grocery store. And that's who I was. And so when we went out, we had fun, and we went out for drinks, and we'd go do this, that, and the other. But then eventually, about 6 months after I left, so only a couple months after dating Jamie, about 6 months after having to move in with grandma, I had a blow up with grandma and my mom, who was at the house at the same time. And basically now I'm homeless again, because I had a blow up, and I said, I'm out, I'm leaving. That's it. I'm not getting kicked out at that point, but it was throwing up my hand. Yeah. So I moved in with Jamie after only a few short months. And again, she had no idea. Like I hid it. I always tell people I was professional at hiding this problem.
Most functioning alcoholics are, you figure out ways, like, in previous podcasts, my partner knew, but, I didn't realize I was doing this, but I would on the way to work, grab it, have a beer. I would have mouthwash ready. If I had a cigarette or anything like that, I had mouthwash there ready, so no one could smell it on me. By the point I got to work, I was drunk, but not. I was so good at hiding it. I was more it seemed like I was more articulate with how I spoke to customers than when I was sober. So I was a better in my eyes. I was a better person when I was somewhat pissed, and no one knew. No one knew. And I
same thing. You'd stop at the store on the way to work. And mine, at that point, I had moved from beer, didn't cut it. I mean, I'd have beers, don't get me wrong, but if I needed to get the job, it was straight up shots.
Spirits.
Yeah, stop on the way to work. Yeah, for sure. And mouthwash or mints or whatever to try to mask it, So that's in 2017. So that's when things really started turning south. And I didn't recognize how bad it was. My health at this point had gotten, which is kind of leading me to the turning point and the pivot in my life, my story.
This is like, let's get into, this is the bit I'm like, wow about. So tell us about, that moment when, I read in the thing you sent me that, they looked at you and went, you're off color. I said, you're going to hospital. So take it away from there.
So the dates, and I remember them specifically. It was a Sunday. It was January 7th, 2018. When it really started to take hold. I was moving furniture. Jamie and I actually were moving furniture for a buddy of mine, a couch and whatever else. And I didn't feel good. But I simply thought, oh, you're hungover. You haven't had enough to drink today. I mean, it was noon, and I'd only had a couple of shots at that point, so, I mean, that's got to be the problem. My blood alcohol wasn't stable at that point. I was actually sober, ish. And so I just didn't feel good. Monday felt a little worse. Tuesday, the 8th, I was working actually where I'm currently working now at a different role. But one of my employees came up to me and she looked at me straight face. And I think it was a little tongue in cheek, but she looked at me and she goes, "Kelly, are you dying?" And I kind of looked at her, am I, no, I'm not dying. Get back to work. Do you know how busy we are? What do you, no, I'm not dying. Go. The following day, which was Wednesday, the 10th, my boss came up to me outside of my office, and apparently they had all been talking about me, my other management team, my peers and my friends, and they had talked to me that morning, and they all had elected my boss to come and say something to me. And she comes up to me and she says, "Kelly, you need to go to the hospital. You're sick." And I was so in denial, and I wouldn't see it. I refused to see it. And I looked at her and I said, "No, there's no way I'm going to the hospital. You know how busy I am today? I have this, that, the other to do. Like, I can't. I'll go after work." And she paused for a moment. She says, "No, you're not hearing me. You can find a ride to the hospital. I can give you a ride to the hospital, or I can call 911. However you want to handle it is what we'll do." And that's really when I went, man, am I that sick? And so the chef
Were you
comes
in
out of the
denial at this point? Like, when I say in
Oh
denial,
yeah.
were you? Did you know did you have any inkling that you were
I knew I
sick?
didn't feel well. I didn't feel good, and I knew that. I actually hadn't drank Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday at that point because I didn't feel good. Which, if you listen to the rest of my story, that's that's a big deal. And so I knew I didn't feel well, but I didn't know I was in end stage liver failure at the time, which is what I was. Acute end stage liver failure. And so when the chef comes around the corner, he actually held up a Post-it note, those little yellow Post-it notes next to my face. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that tissue commercial, but they have one where you do like the white check for your teeth to see how white your teeth are. Yeah. So he did that to me with a Post-it note, and he goes, "Nope, that's the color you are right there." And I was jaundiced. My eyes were yellow. My skin was yellow. I refused to see it, refused to admit it. So I agreed. I left work, but I didn't get a ride, and I didn't call 911, and I didn't go to the hospital. I drove myself to the local urgent care by my house, which is about 45 minutes away from where I work. And so when I walked into the urgent care, you get checked in, and the doctor comes in, and he looks at me and just asks me, "So why are you here?" "Well, I'm sick." And he goes, "There's nothing I can do for you here. You need to go to a hospital. Like, I can't help you here." And he plainly looked at me and said, "You're drinking yourself to death." And I brushed it off as, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's only a doctor, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so I actually didn't go to the hospital that night. I went the next day. I went home. Now at this point, Jamie's involved. She was working out of town at that point when I went to the urgent care, and I called her and tried to play it off. "Hey, just letting you know, Teresa, or my boss sent me home from work. But I'm just going to go to urgent care. I'll just see you when you get home." She dropped what she was doing and headed back into town, 4-hour drive from out of town. And she was in the hospital with me, or the urgent care, when I went. So I went to the hospital. They weren't really sure at that point, I don't think, how sick I was. And they definitely didn't know how they were going to fix me. So for the next few weeks, I bounced from a couple of different hospitals, and we tried multiple different things, multiple different theories. I was still, I think, trying to hide how much I drank. But I was actually detoxing when I got admitted to the first hospital finally. I was there for about a week. And part of this is foggy for me. Jamie, this is some of Jamie's words because she was there. But I was delusional and hallucinating. Like I was detoxing. And so I was not making sense all the time. I don't remember it this way, but the people around me do. And that was that first week or so, probably. So I went back and forth, to a couple different hospitals. But what would happen in the beginning, what I don't think anybody really knew is that my kidneys had now started to fail as well and were shutting down. It's called acute kidney failure. As a result, because your kidneys and your liver, they work in tandem. They have a very symbiotic relationship internally. And so every time they would discharge me, I mean, it would be a day, maybe a day and a half, and I'd have to go back to the ER for multiple different reasons. The last one where they discharged me was, now we're probably 5 weeks into it, and I was at my grandmother's house, where my mom was and I was, and that's where I was, because it was kind of central town versus my house, which is outside of town. My mom was there, my grandmother was there, and I was there, and I was not doing well at all. You know, my blood pressure was crashing. I couldn't stay awake. I couldn't get up.
So by this point, they have realized what's going on. So they know.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The family. Yeah. I guess I did kind of gloss over that. So when I first got to the hospital, I was adamant with Jamie that she didn't tell anybody. I mean, not a soul. We didn't tell my family, I think, for 10 days, something along those lines. Because I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was not. Sorry, my vacuum's going. But I was ashamed of where I'd come. I mean, going back to that kid in high school, I was supposed to be somebody. You know, I was supposed to be a good dad. I was supposed to be a coach. I was supposed to be in a leadership role. And here I am. I have now drank myself to the point where I'm dying.
Like, literally, you drank yourself to death. Like, that's what happens.
Yeah. And I was embarrassed. I didn't tell. Finally, Jamie said, we have to call your family. Like, we have to. We can't keep this from them. And at that point, too, my relationship with my family was rocky, to say the least. I mean, I was good with my mom and I was good with my grandma, but I was rocky with my dad and my siblings. It was non-existent with my kids. You know, I had no identity at that point. I was not a dad anymore. I was no longer a parent. I wasn't a husband, which I had been my entire adult life. Both of those I had been my entire adult life. And that was gone. And that's how I ended up plunging even further, I think, down into drinking. And so, sitting in the hospital room, she finally said, we need to call your family. So they came to visit, and I think they started to slowly realize how sick I was and what was actually going on. You know, and what's fun about it is I could still even bullshit some of my family at that point, except for my sister, who is she's an RN. And she's, for her entire life, has called me on my shit. Like, she'll just tell you how it is, and she does it for all three of us boys. You know, she'll just call you on it. She knew exactly what was going on. Her and I weren't talking, but she was talking to either my mom or my dad. I mean, let me rephrase. We were talking, but this isn't stuff she would tell me directly. She would tell Jamie or my mom or whoever it was. No, Kelly's dying. His liver is shutting down. And so we did that for about 5 weeks, and it's mid-February now at this point. I'm at my grandma's house, and I'm having a rough day. I can't walk. I can't stay awake. I'm in so much pain because I'm as big as a house. Because what happens with liver failure is your liver, which creates and secretes fluids, and I'm not a doctor. Although I feel like I should be an expert, but basically those fluids now have nowhere to go because your liver is not functioning. So it simply just drains or secretes into your abdomen. And because it's not where it's supposed to, your liver, it just keeps increasing the fluids. And so you turn into being, you know, seriously, as big as I was as big as a house. And I was so uncomfortable. My back hurt and my liver hurt, and it hurt when I peed. Because there's a level called bilirubin, and when you're not functioning. In fact, you could probably relate to this, you know, when you were drinking, is when you go pee and you have that really dark colored pee because you're dehydrated, and that's your bilirubin, or a sign of your bilirubin being off whack. Mine was, when I went to the hospital that first time, it was the color and consistency of Coca-Cola. I mean, it was brown, and it hurt, you know. And so they called my dad over. I'm now in the bed and I can't get up. They want to take me to the hospital, but I can't move. It takes both of my brothers to get me out of bed and into the car. Yeah. Because I wouldn't let them call 911. Like I should have.
But see, it's that, you know, that Kelly that's still there. Like, that's that little part of your brain that's, you know, still got that bit of pride, trying to you know, bullshit everyone into what actually going on, but it's like
Right.
it's trying to hold on, and it's
Yep.
like, no, you got to let go. You've got to let
It's
go.
it was there pretty much for the next couple of weeks, and finally, when I was at the hospital, I went to the university hospital here in town, which is where I ended up having the transplant and having that team work on me. So I got there, and the problem that we were having throughout this whole thing is finally it was really determined that I was an end-stage liver failure. And the hard part about the whole thing was we saw multiple doctors, obviously, throughout the weeks. And there was quite a few of them that said there's nothing they can do for me, that I was too far gone. I was 38-year-old and end-stage liver failure, and there's, sorry, sir, you need to get your affairs in order, because you have a couple of months at this point before you shut down.
How did you navigate that feeling? That feeling of being told, get your affairs in order, you're going to die. What emotion is that? What goes through your head? Like, how does?
I think even at that point I was still in denial. I went, okay, whatever, that's fine. We'll go to someone else. Is that sort of attitude about it, because I was still in denial on how sick I was. Like, I'm not that sick. There's no way. I can't be that way. At least at that point, when the first few times it happened. Now, Jamie, on the other hand, she knew exactly what it meant. And so there was one doctor that we went to, and it was a specialist, liver specialist, supposed to be the best in town. We got into him quickly because of my condition. This is before I ended up at the university hospital, and he gave us both of those speeches about there's really nothing I can do for you. Jamie looked at him square in the face and said, "That's not good enough." And she got up, she wheeled me out of I couldn't walk, so she wheeled me in my wheelchair right out of his office. Now we went. I mean, she fired him on the spot, basically. And thank God she did.
Imagine,
there's so many times that woman has saved my life. I mean, I don't know that I can count them anymore. So finally, I end up at the university hospital, and it is determined at this point that a full liver transplant is the only way that I'm going to be cured or fixed. I can't say cured, but that I'm going to survive is a full liver transplant. Now the doctors have a dilemma on their hands, and the dilemma has two parts, really. The first part is that I'm too sick for a transplant. Like, even if they find me a liver, and even if they can get me into surgery, I'm not going to survive the surgery, and I'm not going to survive the trauma of trying to incorporate that new organ into my body. I'm not strong enough. I don't have it. That was problem number one. Problem number two is, why on earth would we waste a perfectly good organ on you, even if you survive? Well, first, let's find a liver. Then we get it into you, and now you survive. What part of your history over the last 15 to 18 years tells us that you're not going to turn right around and go start drinking again and go back to restaurants and go back to your old lifestyle? Why would we risk wasting this liver or this organ? Because organs are hard to come by. And there are plenty of extremely deserving candidates that are on a transplant list all throughout the world. And that's the dilemma the transplant team had, to weigh those options and weigh those pros and cons about me. I had, there were two doctors that were there at the university that, I don't know why, but they sincerely stuck their necks, their reputations on the line for me. They stuck their necks out for me, and they went to bat for me. They don't know me. I mean, they knew me from working on me the last month or whatever, 3 weeks.
Do you see that as some sort of divine, so, I wouldn't say divine, but like a guardian angel or someone really looking out for you?
Something in the universe put a lot of things in place for me to be sitting here talking to you. Jamie is one of them. She's the first one. Had she not been there that first 6 months, leading up to my surgery, I never would have made it to the hospital. I'd have drank myself to death and never had gone, someone put those doctors on my working on me. They could have worked a different shift and not gotten my name.
It's just, I get it.
There's so many different things that I have no good answers for. I just don't. So those two doctors put together a plan, went to the transplant team, and somehow convinced them that I was worth the risk, that I'm going to live a long, healthy life going after this. And they convinced them, and the transplant team said, okay, well, we're going to do it. So now it's beginning of March of 2018. And so now I'm eligible to be put on the list. And now there's a lot of insurance hooplas and all sorts of stuff that you have to do. So a couple of weeks go by, and now I'm officially on the list, and I'm waiting for an organ. And I jumped right to the top because I am now in acute, or not acute, but I am now in for real end stage liver failure. I mean, at this point, I have less than a month.
Yeah, fuck.
And so they find a liver for me, and the doctor comes in and gives me the news that my time, you have to forget, my time is not exactly accurate on how it all transpired. So I don't know what day of the week or what time of day it was, but I remember him talking to me. And he tells me we have a liver, and that night that they were working on the liver, and I was going to go down to the OR and ICU to get prepped for surgery. My body started to crash. It just started to crash. And I do have a theory now, looking back, as to why that happened that day. I believe that my body was holding on for as long as it could to get the news that they had found a liver. And once I got that news, somehow subconsciously, I relaxed. I exhaled. I'm like, okay, we made it.
I've heard that before.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's my theory.
No. So I it's funny you say this, because I was listening and read something about it, because just to take a step out of this, my father about 4 years ago did a half Ironman. He's had a few heart issues. However, he collapsed at the finish line. He was pronounced dead for 20 minutes, like not 10,
oh my God.
20 minutes, couldn't find a pulse, gone, dead. He had a blockage, and the blockage was there for the entire race. He could have died at any other point in that race, but at the finish line, he had a heart attack.
Wow.
So they revived him, which thank God. But there have been so many cases when it comes to endurance sports or anything of that matter, that when you get to the finish line, or you see the finish line just there, your body lets go, because you could look at it as a your body's under so much trauma, right? You've years, for your case, years and years and years of trauma that you put so much stress, and you finally get somewhat, it's going to be okay. It's like, oh shit. And then your body starts to disintegrate. Same thing with it. It just makes sense, because how amazing the human body truly is when it comes to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when we get talking about some of the other things, I completely agree, especially when it comes to endurance sports and things of that nature, how far you can push. But I do think that my body, just when it finally heard the news that it looked silently or whatever it was, said I can't do it anymore. My body, we can't do it any longer. So I ended up getting wheeled down to the ICU prior to surgery, because the organ that they found for me was so new and recently harvested that hadn't been bedded yet. So the surgeon and one of his residents, they flew to Phoenix in the helicopter. I believe I have this part of the story right. Again, I was in and out, but they flew to Phoenix to vet, the organ, vet the liver. make sure it's going to work for me. Made the call that, yep, it's going to go. So that's when I got wheeled down to the ICU. Then they flew back. The hospital flew the private jet, because you need a specific certified person that can carry a courier that can carry live organ. The private jet to go get it, to bring it back. So as that's happening, I'm now bleeding from everywhere, anywhere. I'm in the ICU and I'm puking up blood. I'm coughing up blood. My liver is shutting down. I have bleeding out my nose. Jamie is now sitting next to me in the ICU with a blood bucket for me. And every few minutes she has to dump it out as I drift in and out of consciousness. She's, sobbing from what I remember, and, dumping the bucket and then cleaning it up. And at some point in that evening, the ICU nurse turns to her and basically says, if this doesn't happen in the next 6 or 7 hours, he's not going to make it. We need to get him into the OR and now, because I was no longer just simply dying. I was now actively dying. My body was trying to die at this point. To put it in perspective for folks, so I had 20 plus, it was like 25 or 27 plus blood transfusions prior to going into surgery. That was before they opened me up. That's how much I was bleeding. So I get wheeled in. I do remember that part, getting wheeled in. And the next thing I really truly remember was waking up. I think it was 2 days later. And this is the part that I never know I never know what words to pick. So when I woke up, my eyes open and I'm still hooked up to the ventilators down my throat, and I have all these tubes and whatnot, but Jamie's on this side holding my hand, and my sister's on this side holding my hand, and all my family is there. My son is there. And I just am overwhelmed with gratitude. I mean, just, it's just, I was the essence of that word. I made it to the other side. I shouldn't have been here. Like, I shouldn't be here right now. I remember how sick I was just a few hours before. I mean, I shouldn't be here. And I'm thankful for my family, and I'm, that they're here and they stuck with me, and they're here holding my hands. I'm thankful for the doctors that have worked for me, worked on me for the last months at this point. I mean, at this point, we're 3 months into this journey in the hospital. And simultaneously, the amount of guilt, the soul crushing guilt. I couldn't have one. I couldn't have one emotion without the other.
Yeah.
They're intertwined.
It's like you've come out the other side, and that, so you never had that guilt in the past. You deny, and in a roundabout way, that guilt it shows that you're like, from what I read, you to come back and have that first initial, just gratitude towards life. To me, that shows you in that moment, that instant you woke up, you were a different person. You
without a doubt.
You transformed, you've put your body under so much trauma and stress, and you've come out the other side. That was rock bottom. That was the absolute and utter rock bottom. You died. You were reborn. You were reborn as someone new. And to have that guilt, it's just like you needed to feel that guilt. To me, from reading it, it was like you needed to feel that. And I completely understand, that rebirth of coming from that dark place, and in your case, literally crawling out of that hole, out of that dark nasty spot, and being reborn into who you are today, which I just blown away, absolutely blown away. It's an amazing story from start to finish. So you wake up, you've got you're flooded with so many emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that, you know, of
Well,
course,
it was
the road to
tough.
recovery is not going to be linear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was tough because now, let's just take emotionally speaking. I'm raw. I
Yeah.
have I have all of these emotions that I truly feel like I've never felt or dealt with before, because I always
Mm,
masked it. I was always drunk. I was always on stage. At work I was on stage with my family. I was on stage. I was never just me and feeling whatever it was that I'm supposed to be feeling in that moment. I never did. And so now I have more emotions than I can count, and I have zero way of coping with them, or even knowing what they are. Jamie's father came to visit me after surgery. I'm probably 3 or 4 days. I'm still in the ICU, and they came down. They were trying to support her because she's still got a job. We still have a house. We still have kids. So they came down to support her. But now he's in my room, and both him and my soon-to-be father-in-law and mother-in-law, they're visiting me in my ICU room, and he starts to tell me about how he's helping me at home, and he's doing, he's pulling the weeds, and he cleaned up the dog shit, and he did all this other stuff. And I lost it. I started crying, dying, crying, like bawling. So, oh my God, what are you crying for? And all I could think was, look at what I'm doing. This man has to do my chores for me because of the shit that I've done in my life. Like, I can't even take care of my own house because I'm laid up here with a hole in my stomach that goes from here to here. And this guy who shouldn't love me, there's no way. Look at the man your daughter just picked. Why on earth are you here supporting me from 500 miles away? And now doing my chores. And I started bawling. And there were multiple moments like that. There were family friends that would come, two people specifically who actually worked at the hospital, who I've known since I was 2, I think, because they were family friends, and they came to visit with me. And as soon as they walked in the door, I just started crying. I couldn't not. It just happened. And it was because I believe, had never actually truly felt emotion before, and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to feel them. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know how to cope. So that was a big part of the next few months. So part of that plan that I told you the doctors had put together for the transplant team was after transplant. I now had a year's worth of what's called smart recovery, very similar to AA as far as the destination we're traveling in sobriety. Very different vehicles, but similar ideas. So I had to do that. I had to go to therapy at least once a week with a counselor and a therapist. I told her I wanted to go twice a week right out of surgery for the first, I don't know how many weeks I went twice a week, because I had to. I had no idea what to do or how to do or any of it. So the emotional side of things took a while. I haven't talked about this part. I got into a really, really dark place. I'm going to say 6 weeks to 5 months after transplant. When I got home, now life wasn't normal, but I'm at home.
But it's played out and plateaued for
right. Right. Family's gone home. I no longer am in the hospital. I'm now at home. I can't work because I'm not allowed. I couldn't drive because I'm not allowed. I'm not physically capable of doing it. And man, I was in a dark place. I was sad. And it was, again, my drinking. I lost everything. I no longer have a relationship with my kids. I at that point, I kind of had a relationship with my parents and my siblings. Still have my relationship with Jamie, thank goodness, because who knows what would have happened if I didn't at that point. So what I ended up doing was part of my recovery, physical recovery was, it started at my grandmother's house because I couldn't, right after surgery, I couldn't walk on my own. I couldn't stand. I mean, I was skin and bones. So part of my disease, what happens when your liver shuts down is it no longer produces any enzymes or proteins and all the things that livers do, but your body still needs them. So it consumes all of those proteins. And so I had zero muscle tone. Plus I had been in the hospital, laid up in a hospital bed for 4 months. I mean, I had zero muscles. So if I went down and I fell,
you
I couldn't get up. Somebody had to come get me. Oh man, the worst. After surgery, I'm now 3 or 4 days away from being discharged. And they have just now given me permission to go to the bathroom all by myself. I didn't have to call a nurse. I know, I graduated. So I go to the bathroom and I do my business. And now I'm getting changed into my shorts. So I didn't like wearing the hospital gown. So I wore these big baggy basketball shorts and t-shirt. And so I'm getting changed. And I went to sit in the little, those little hospital chairs that they have. They're like little recliners, right? I went to go sit in. Well, I didn't lock the wheels. And so the wheels, I didn't fall, but the wheels kind of just slid out from underneath me. And I just went down. I went onto my rear. And I tried for 15 minutes I wasn't going to call. Yeah. Nuts. I just got released. Like, I'm not calling. There's no way. Yeah. I tried so hard to pull myself back up. And so then finally my nurse comes in and he opens the door. Huh, you fell, did you? I didn't fall. I sat relatively gingerly. Yeah. But I can't stand back up. So he says, yeah, but I got to report it as a fall. You're going to have to get us whenever you have to go to the bathroom. Oh my gosh. So I sent it. So anyway, I was at between my grandmother's house and my house because Jamie, again, she had just now not worked basically for 3 months. And so she had to go back to work. So Monday through Friday, I would stay with my mom and my grandmother. And then weekends I would come home. And I had to have 24-hour care because I couldn't walk without a walker. I'd have to take wheelchairs for longer distances if we went out to the store to visit my baseball team or whatever it was. And so it started with my first goal was I'm going to go get the mail from the mailbox. That was my first goal. And so I put on my extra baggy basketball shorts because I have this, scar and stitches and staples and everything from here to here. And so I shuffled with my house shoes out to the mailbox and back. And I did that a few times. And then I went to the neighbor's house. And then I went to, the next neighbors and so forth and so on until finally I could walk around the block. So then eventually the story I like to tell is a few weeks later, our youngest, Jamie's son, was graduating 8th grade. And so we were going to do 8th grade pictures. And we have this really neat national park next to our house, about a few miles away anyway. It's up in the foothills. It's really serene. It's in the Sonoran Desert. So those big saguaro cactuses you always see on TV about Arizona, they're everywhere. And so we go to take pictures. And as we get there, we take, the parking lot's up here a little bit. If you can see me up here a little bit. And then you walk down this ramp, this handicap accessible ramp down to where we're going to go take pictures. We walk down. Do that for about an hour. And finally we're done. And I looked at her and I actually have a picture. I'll send you the picture of when I was there. You can see how skinny I was. I mean, I was rail thin. And so we're leaving. And I tell James, I need to go. I need to take a nap. I'm pretty tired. I wore out. I mean, I was out now for the day. And so I'm walking back, and as I'm looking back, I kind of glance to my right, and there are 17 steps that lead back up to the parking lot to my right. And I look over to my left, and there's the ramp that we took here. But the ramp kind of winds all the way back around and then up to the parking lot. So significantly longer walk. Look back to the right, kind of look back to the left, and finally I look at Jamie, and she knew exactly what I was thinking. And she just kind of shakes her head, and she goes, "No, we're going to take the ramp. We're going to go this way." "No, I'm going to take the stairs." We're going to take the ramp, Kelly. You're tired. You don't have your walker. Like, no, we're going to take the stairs. And we went back and forth like this. And no, I'm taking the stairs. Finally, I looked at her and said, "James, I'm going to take the stairs, and I'm not going to use the handrail." And finally, that's when she just let go and conceded and said, "Okay, okay, we're doing this." So I climbed the 17 steps without that handrail, mind you. And I got up to the top, and it was like I won the Super Bowl.
Oh, so those
I
small
let out I let out this barbaric just whoa with the top of my lungs in this very quiet and serene and tranquil place that echoed for miles, I think. You know, people are looking at me like, what the is wrong with this dude? Like, he has problems. As I'm high-fiving, you know, Ryan, our youngest, I'm high-fiving him, and he's going, oh my God, this guy's lost it as I made it. And so, but it's those little moments, man. Like the first time I took a shower by myself, standing up,
little wins, just little wins.
That was awesome, you know. So I'm slowly getting better, physically better, but I am not doing well mentally at this point. Again, you know, I've heard, you know, other podcasts like Rich Roll, for example, he talks about it in recovery, people in recovery. You know, you have all these new emotions that you've never had in your life because you're actually sober, and I have no way of dealing with them. So what I ended up finding was I ended up retreating to the mountains and hiking. It was fantastic. I mean, I've always loved nature. I've always been outdoorsy, but I've never appreciated it like the way I did. I went 2 to 3 times a week, and it was just me and my dog. And I would pick the trails, and God, it drove Jamie nuts, but I would pick the trails that nobody else would pick. I don't want to be around people. I just wanted just me, and I wanted to listen to the pine trees below because we don't have many of them here. I loved going hiking in the big monsoon thunderstorms because I just get soaked, you know, and walking around in the mud, and I'd spend all day out there multiple times a day. So what it ended up doing for me was twofold, 2 parts. I got physically healthier because I'm hiking in the mountains, and then mentally, I had no idea at the time, but I was starting a mindfulness practice.
That's yes.
Learning how to be present. I had no idea that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing, and so. I mean, the mountains were great.
Like I went out for a trail run on Sunday, so your Saturday, and I was explaining. I took a few of the guys out, and you know, we're talking about do I listen to music when I go for a trail run, and I just don't know. I love listening to what's going around. There's you know, there's something mystical, there's something special about being in that moment, listening to your steps, making sure you know your foot placement's right, because you have to be present, or like you don't have to be present, but if you're not present, you know, you're going ass over head, you're going to hurt yourself,
right? If you're not present, you will be in a hurry, paying attention to what's going on. You can't wander off. And I'll take my family out, and the kids and my nieces and nephews or my teenagers, and I'll take them out to the mountains, and they'll say the same thing. Well, can we bring music? Nope, not allowed. Like no headphones, no speakers, no nothing. And so one of my favorite phrases that drives them insane is, no, I want you to listen to the silence. Just listen to it.
I love it.
Just sit there.
Love it.
Listen to the silence. So hiking became my new passion. And so one of the things they do with transplants is they give you this big binder of all the do's and don'ts about transplants, mostly don'ts, by the way. And in that binder, I was talking with my case manager, and she had told me, are you back? All right, there we go. So there we go. Sorry, I had a phone call that came in. So my case manager told me, she goes, it's going to be 6 months before you start to feel like yourself again. It's going to be a year before you are, but before you start, it's going to be 6 months. And I basically was like, that's not going to work. I can't do this for 6 months. So 4 months after that conversation, I took Jamie for an 8-mile hike in the mountains. At that point, we didn't go all the way to the top that day, but it was fantastic. Now, looking back, I probably overdid it that day because I was hurting for a week. But it was awesome because you're in the mountains and you're learning how to be present and out there. So October of that year is really where I started to find my new passion. And so I was on a hike up, it's called Florida Canyon outside of here. I was trying to make it all the way to the top of this ridgeline, and I called my sister to kind of show her and share with her where I was and show her how far I had made it this day. You know, we're looking at this view via FaceTime or whatever we were on. And she said, you know, she goes, Kelly, you should do a half marathon with me next month. What do you, what are you, nuts? There's no way I can run 13 miles. Absolutely not. She goes, she very plainly and quietly, she goes, again, remember the one that calls me on my shit. And she goes, Kelly, how far is your hike today? I don't know, it's like 14 miles. And she just kind of went. The next day I signed up for a half marathon. I'd never signed up for a race in my entire life. I never ran. I was a baseball player. Like, we didn't run. Are you kidding? I didn't like running. And so then I ran a half marathon with her a month later and loved it. I had so many endorphins, and this is 7 months after my transplant.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah, 7 months, almost to the day after my transplant. And it was 6 months after I got out of the hospital. I spent a month afterwards. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, you get it. I mean, that runner's high, and it's my first race ever. I wasn't fast. Don't get me wrong. I did a half marathon, like 3 hours plus or whatever it was. So, but I didn't care. I finished. Doing something I didn't think I was gonna. So, so that's 2018. So that following year, I did hiking.
This is like quite recent. Like this
is November. That half marathon was November of 2018. So it was 2.5 years ago now.
So I think this is this is a real good segue into, racing and
sure.
Like, because I'm just having a look for time right now. I think we've got about 20 or so, 15 minutes left.
Okay.
But I think, I think this is a really good way to get into, your. Let me ask you, what do you want to do? Do you want to become a trail runner, or do you just want to enjoy it, or where's the transition? What do you want to do? What races have you got coming up? I know you sent me a list of those. You've got a really big.
I got a big year coming up. So, I have officially dove down that endurance sports rabbit hole. It's no longer a pastime. It's now an obsession at this point, I think. Especially if you ask my family, they look at me like I'm nuts and crazy. So last year in 2020 was really when it started getting going. At that point I had, I ran a few races or whatever, nothing significant. But last year, I'm going to say June of 2020-ish, give or take, I started going, I want to run a 100-mile race. I heard about them on podcasts or whatever it was. I want to run, and specifically, I want to run Leadville. So, of course, like a good true alcoholic, we don't do anything half-assed. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it, So let's pick Leadville because that's, one of the easy ones, right? And so I read Charlie Engel's book. I read Rich Roll's book. I read David Goggins. I read anything I could find about that stuff. And so it led me two places. One, it led me to a plant-based whole food diet, which I've been on over a year now.
That's another one I want to skim over. How is that treating you? Because I've recently myself not going plant-based, but more vegetarian, not strict.
Right.
It's just trying to adapt that into the family life as well. Sure. But how's that treating you when it comes to recovery, athletic performance?
I love it. Absolutely love it. I'll never go back. And it only took 3 weeks for me to really feel the benefits. I mean, it was a short period of time. And I come from, we had steak dinners on Sundays growing up. I mean, 20 people would come over. We had T-bones all over the place. My entire family are carnivores. I absolutely love it. So I just decided one day, I told Jamie, because I had been thinking about it after reading all these books or whatever. And finally, I looked at James, I go, so James, I've been thinking, which is my phrase for her. And she knows something crazy is about to come out of my mouth. And so I said, I'm going to go vegan. And that was last summer. And I've been that way ever since. I mean, we switched almost immediately. We wanted to check with my doctors and make sure that it was smart. At that point, because I have to, I do have to pay attention with my transplant on what I do and what I eat. But my dietitian was gung ho. I mean, she was all for it. She said, absolutely, let's do it. And so we start talking about different numbers, whatever. But and it's easier than you think. I mean, it really is not terribly difficult. But what I always tell people now when they ask me about it, it's like, just start small. You don't have to go cold turkey. Just pick one thing that you don't. I want to cut out whatever it is, red meat. You can keep all the chicken and fish and whatever else and eggs and dairy. Just cut out the red meat. And pretty soon you're not going to notice you're not eating it. And then, for me anyway, I was kind of slowly trending that way anyhow, trying to dive into these endurance sports. So, but yeah, going plant-based is, it's fantastic. I love it. I mean, it's helped. I wake up better. I sleep better. I'm better at work. My energy levels. You recover, like you don't have any inflammation in your joints, and your back doesn't hurt, or your legs. Or if you do have a good hard workout, and your legs are sore, it doesn't last that long. That lactic acid gets flushed right out. You're drinking enough water. You're eating the right foods. You're fueling your body properly
for performance.
So, yeah. Well, and I think it's a relationship with food. That's the big thing. It's, I use food as fuel now. It's not used as comfort or reward or the easy way, like those things. And so you have to be mindful about it. I mean, you have to be intentional. I can't just, we're taking a big trip with the family coming up actually tomorrow. And we're going and with the family, and they're very, very worried about me and not being able to eat, because I'm the only vegan. Yeah. And I tell them, like, guys, it's okay. You have a grocery store somewhere near the house.
You'll figure it out.
Don't worry about me. I'm good. Don't you sweat it. But you have to be intentional. It's hard for me to eat, like, it's going to be hard at the airport. It's difficult to find stuff, or a baseball game or whatever. But I love it. I mean, we can talk about that. Like, I
feel like I could talk to you for it's already been an hour, and
I was going to say it's been a while.
Yeah. So look, we could I could talk for years on this type of stuff.
Right.
No.
So I think, specifically about the racing part, and then really how you and I got connected, because I want to set up Run for Your Life down here in Tucson. I mean, that's one of the things I want to do after listening to your podcast, because I think it is a fantastic idea, and I don't believe there's anything like it, at least not in Southern Arizona, maybe up in Phoenix, but I don't think so. I don't know for sure. So what ended up happening, I started running a few races, small ones. And then I joined a local running group. I'll give them a shout out to my Southwest Endurance family. I mean, that's my sweat family is what we're called.
Cool.
But I joined that running group last year, and it's been fantastic. So now they help me with, technique and cadence and form and, breathing and all that different stuff. So now my running not only now do I have a, kind of a team and a club and whatnot, but now it's fun too, because now you when you're running with more ease and purpose behind it. So now the races are getting better. So I started with them, and then all of a sudden last year, Christmas Eve of last year, I told my friends, I said, I'm going to run a marathon. And my coaches, by the way, did not like that idea, even a little bit. The furthest I had ever ran before was 13 miles for a half marathon. I had a couple, 5 of those, whatever it was. And I said, no, I'm going to run a full marathon. And so I had it set up logistically. Jamie was my aid stations, plural.
Yeah.
So she would drive, she got me to the starting line. She would drive like 6 miles and meet me on this. We have a path. It's called a loop that goes all around Tucson. And I just ran that. So no cars, no nothing. And she'd meet me in 6 miles. She'd make sure I was good, water, food, good. Then she'd drive another 6 or 7 miles. But what ended up happening was I had friends that wanted to join in and would come with me. So I had 2 sets of friends that met and ran with me for 7 miles. And then another set of friends came and ran with me the last 6. I had other sets of friends that couldn't come down, that ran their own half marathons in support up in Prescott, which is about 3.5 hours from here.
Yeah.
So it started this whole to do, and we may even just try and do it every Christmas Eve. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
That's your power. That is your power. That look what you like, and this is why I as soon as you asked, I went, yeah, got like there was something about your story that I don't know what it was. There's a leadership, there's a hidden talent there that you have as well, and that's why I'm like, go for it, because you can bring people together. Right. You want to connect people. You want to be around people.
Right.
Exactly. That translates from hospitality in the early days.
Mm-hmm. Sure it does.
Or you want to be around good people, because these customers weren't bad people. You get the bad shit one every now and again, but I can see how this is all played out for you, and again, in hindsight, it's all hindsight, and it's played out exactly how, how it should have,
Right.
that way.
I
It's cool.
I completely agree. I said in the past, for all the as hard as this was, my all the years drinking, obviously the time during my transplant, it had to happen. I had to go through that to get here. I never would be here if I didn't do that. And this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing right now. I'm supposed to, the phrase that I use, and I stole this from a movie, but the phrase that I used when I woke up that day in the ICU was, I am going to earn this gift every day from here on out, for the rest of my days. Every day I'm going to earn it, and I'm going to earn it in different ways. Yeah, it does. It speaks to me because there's no reason I should be here. There's none. I shouldn't be here today.
You were you got to look at it. You were for some godforsaken reason, you were chosen to be here.
And I think the reason is so that I could help other people in every way that I can. So even at my job, I help families.
Being in service. Being in service.
Yeah. I went, and I am now a facilitator for that Smart Recovery program that helped me, that first the years since, not that first year, but especially that first year. I actually work with other transplant patients now as they go through their journey on transplants. I never had anyone to kind of talk to me. Jamie never had anyone on what we're supposed to, because life is a freaking whirlwind when that happens. So we're there to kind of help answer questions and say, no, that's normal. No, it well, that was one's embarrassing, but yeah, it's normal. We're going to help you get through your own transplant. So we do that now. In fact, one of my guys just got done with a double transplant a month ago. Like the first one didn't work, and he was dying all over again, and so they had to get him another one. And so now he just got home. I've never met the man, but we're family at this point because we spent the last year together. So that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help people, whether it's through their wellness journey, or you're talking to you about, plant-based diets and whole foods. I would have never, ever done what I'm doing now had I not damn near killed myself drinking. It would have never happened. Yeah. And yeah, that's why I'm here. And so, like, coming up, what I want to do is inspire people by doing some crazy stuff that I do. So that whole running thing, like last year we did, it wasn't running, it was hiking, but I work with a program called the Teen Launchpad Center, which is up in Prescott, for those friends of mine that work there. But we hike rim to rim at the Grand Canyon in one day. Now it's not the rim to rims and however many times people do it, but we do, and we raise money. And I did that last year. I did a 100-mile race at the Tour de Tucson. I had to go buy a bike to ride that race because I didn't own a bike. I'd never ridden a race before in my life. But I decided I wanted to go do it, and I'm gonna go do it. And that was about a year after transplant or so, something like that. And so my running, you asked if I wanted to be a trail runner, and I'm headed that way. Not there quite yet, but I'm getting there. But I ran the one marathon last Christmas Eve. I suckered him into doing the David Goggins 4x4x48. We did, in fact, actually, I got the shirt on right now.
I was about to say, I got
it right there. And so we did that back in March, and that was fan-freaking-tastic. And again, people look at you like, what are you, nuts? You're going to get up every 4 hours and go running? Yes, ma'am. We're doing it. So then I've got coming up now, I'm going to do my first triathlon in 2 weeks.
Nice.
Never done one of them before. And I'm not a very good swimmer. We'll see how this goes.
What distance is that?
Oh, it's a sprint. So it's small. But it's my first one. So as long as I don't drown, I think we're going to call it victory. And so then moving through this year, there are lots to come. So I'm doing the rim to rim again. We're raising money for the Trek for Teens and the launch pad. Then after that, next month, that's in October. Then I've got the Tour de Tucson in November. I've got another, actually I just upped it. It's no longer going to be a marathon in December. It's going to be a 50K.
Yeah.
Because why not? I mean, you already ran 26 miles. What's 5 more? It's fine.
Exactly.
And then in January, it all comes to a head in January, because I'm going to do my first ultra marathon. It's 52.5-mile trail race in the mountains outside Phoenix. So I'm stoked. Training just started for it.
Yeah, cool. No, that's all. Like, again, I think, just to sort of wind this down and bring it back down, land this plane. I think there's a lot that people, like, even listening to you talk just then, and I was pulling stuff out of that, and I'm like, you died and got resurrected.
Yeah.
You were here for some purpose, and you're slowly figuring it out, and it's a fucking beautiful narrative. It's a book. It is a story the listeners can really connect to, because if I don't think, I have different tastes to other people, and but I think how I connect to my listeners, they will connect to this story.
Sure.
And again, for you to reach out to me and ask to start at Run for Your Life is like, wow, go for it. I want you to make that your baby in Arizona. You do what you run with it. And I just thank you for being so vulnerable through that whole story, like, narrative. I'm blown away. I'm seriously blown away by that. And I think, I'm not going to say you owe Jamie, because she did it because she loved you. You do not owe her. She did it because, yeah, of course, you want to pay back the favor, but she didn't do it for any other reason. Other than she loved you.
There we go.
Yeah, she right. And you don't owe the people around you. And this is what I've come to. I thought I owed people an apology, and if I treated them wrong, of course I did. But the people were there because of you. People that who are standing around you, your family. You don't owe them anything. They were there because your family. They love you. That unconditional love was there. So, for you to owe it to yourself. You said you're going to pay it back every single day. And I think that's a very, very powerful sentiment to have. I think, this whole story is powerful. I think, to sort of wrap this up, what is something, you can give the listeners, a little saying or something, just something to, to nail that coffin. What
all right. Well, I think part of what I try to do every day, and this is something that I didn't invent this. I was told this. Actually, I heard this. Start every day with just a little bit of gratitude. That's it. Take 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is that you want to do, but think about what you are truly grateful for. And I don't mean the common things that you're grateful for, like my family's healthy and the roof over my head. I mean, really get down to, why are you grateful sincerely? And it's just for you. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to share it. It's just simply for you. And just take a few minutes and do that. I like to do it personally right after I work out or run in the mornings, and before I go to work. So in that transition phase, and really just take, like I said, 5 minutes or 15 minutes, and it really sets the tone for my day. Mm-hmm. And what happens, at least in my experience in my life, what happens is that work gets stressful, but it doesn't, when you start gratitude-wise, it doesn't get stressful, because whatever is stressful in that particular moment really is not that big a deal. So I start with a little bit of gratitude. In fact, here you go. I'll leave it with this one little story. We were camping and hiking. Jamie and I were. I don't think she knows the story. And I was sitting on the end of the tailgate of my truck, and it was just me. There's no one else around me. It's simply me. And I watched an oak leaf fall and flutter all the way to the ground. And as I watched it, I was kind of looking at it, and I thought to myself, I went, I am the only person in the history of time that had the privilege of sitting right here and watching that happen. It was only my moment. Nobody else got that. And I was thankful to be there right at that moment. And I know it's something small as a leaf falling, but man, that grounds me when I think about stuff like that. It just puts life in perspective when you take that approach to whatever it is in your life. You know, you take that approach and truly be grateful for what is happening to you or around you or for you. I think that'd be the one piece of advice to help people through the day.
Oh, I think it's beautiful. I completely and utterly understand. You know, I practice before I go to bed. I've actually got a reminder on my phone. I set 3 things you're grateful for. You know, affirmation sort of thing every night before I go to bed. And you know, I come up with the darnest shit. Like, I am great. Like, you know, the other night I am grateful that I got to have air conditioning in the car, you know, whilst it was cold. Like, just very simple stuff, but it was like, no, I'm genuinely grateful for that because other people don't, you know. And I think, you know, it's grounding. It's so grounding, and you find yourself in certain situations and you get brought back to that just being great. I don't know how to articulate it, but you know, I think you getting what I'm putting down is, you know,
For sure.
And you sort of realize that, you know, life's pretty fucking good for what it is, you know, and you know, things that you thought were bad aren't really that bad. Like, and especially for you, you would know exactly what bad is. So
it's
awesome.
I go back to those 10 seconds after I woke up, those first 10 seconds, that gratitude and guilt. And that is a humbling emotion to go back to. So it puts things in perspective for you no matter what's going on. So
well, awesome. I think that's a really good way to sort of wrap this episode up. And yeah, for those who are listening, I'll leave all Kelly's information in the show notes. But other than that, yeah, look, thank you so much for sharing everything, putting that on a platter for everybody. And I think, you know, you'd never ever be embarrassed about that story, because there is so much power and so many things, nuggets people can pull from that. Like, you got to be proud of where you are now and be proud of where you're going.
For sure. Well, I appreciate it, man. No, thank you for having me. I'm sincerely humbled that you asked, and I'm forever grateful that we got connected. Miracles of the universe that kind of made our paths cross from across the world.
That's how it works. It works. All right. Well, in 3, 2, 1, peace.